Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is okay this morning. I've been hanging out all night with Ebon Kim. Let's see if my mic. I'm going to try to do this one relatively quick. My goal is about 10 minutes. 12 maybe, but around that much. Wow, I feel spacey. All right, so an interesting story comes out right here. Apparently, Democrats are terrified of Bernie Sanders, or at the very least, the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. Moderates are terrified. Now, the awesome part of this story is that the moderates are joining together to try to figure out how to hold back the night. How do we hold them back? How do we stop that wing of the Democratic Party from turning us back to the actual Democratic Party, representing actual democratic values? How do we hold back the night? This story is funny because they even talk about it like a safe space. That the narrative at this point that we've been talking about, let's say, aside from the Russia nonsense, the narrative that has been most propagated is the narrative of the left. Education, healthcare, meaning Medicare for all. Like, that's been the narrative that's been pushed forward. Sanders at one point pushing for a job guarantee. Less war. I mean, Sanders has even put forth the kind of less war thing going with the right wing on this one. So they make the argument that the narrative has been put forward from the left. They needed to find a safe space, and they needed to find a way to counterattack, to push back the night, to hold back the Sanders wing of the party. They were terrified. They were shook. They're coming to get us. They're coming to get us. Yeah, they probably are coming to get you. This article is awesome. So, they should be terrified. They are coming to get you, and they should come and get you. I mean, ultimately, you have a wing of the party that are true believers, that mean it. And if we're being honest, what's considered to be the Democratic Party at this point has grown fat and complacent. They've grown extraordinarily fat and profoundly complacent. At some point, and I would say, let's say around the Clinton era, they lost the mission. At some point, it didn't become this idea of actually getting anything concrete done. It became more so, meaning concrete from the standpoint of an overarching goal. It became partisanship and gaming around the partisanship. Meaning, I'm not trying to get something, affect some kind of change from a long-term stance of society itself, or move society in a different direction long-term. No, I am doing short-term gain from the standpoint of relative distance to the Republican Party. So, I can take this cash, because God, I love cash and I love nice things. As the party, I'm going to take this cash, and I'm going to move to the right. Because the catch is, they're not going to give me this cash if I don't move to the right. They're just going to give it to somebody else. Now, as I move to the right, I realize that I can move to the right up until a certain point because I can still tell labor, and I can still tell blacks, and I can still tell everyone else, you have nowhere else to go. And you're better off with me. Even as I've moved further to the right, even as I've given you a shittier deal, you're still not as bad off with me as you are with them. This, to some degree, became gamesmanship, Democrat theory 101, and the way they went about their affairs. At some point, you don't even know what they stand for. It's just in opposition to something else. You have nowhere else to go. I deride the left as being the political equivalent of an abused spouse, because they stay with this particular argument, this brutal, brutish argument of you have nowhere else to go. Well, at this point, people have decided maybe they do. And people have decided that we're sick of that. And not just sick of that. True believers. Incorruptible on this point. They have a very clear ideology in regards to what they want. And that ideology, to some degree, is born out of the best teacher. Experience, pain, debt, poverty, and hurt and upset from what they would consider to be the cheating of the person who they were supporting. Yes, you've created your monsters, and those monsters are coming to get you and drag you back to hell. So, yes, I would be very concerned. Part of the other reason that they're concerned, and they're going to try to craft and sell moderate arguments to people, is this. This is what it really, at the end of the day, boils down to. Third way, majority of our financial support from Wall Street business executives. Who's putting money in your pocket, and what are they telling you to say? The moderates. The moderates. The moderates for a reason. And moderates because if they go too far to the left, they know that they won't be getting that money in their pocket. Their job at this point, the investment that these Wall Street executives are putting into them, the voluptuous sums of cash that they're sticking into their asses, it's to get them to craft messages that allow you to essentially allow them to go about their status quo. The truth of it is, their candidate lost. The most status quo candidate in the history of candidates lost. They put her on the ballot, and she lost to reality show hosts. Now, they can say anything they want about Donald Trump and Russia and all this other stuff. The flat fact is, she lost to a reality show host. She had the entire media establishment on her side. She had the majority of talk show hosts. She had the majority of newspapers. All of those people, even many Republicans, were on her side, and she lost. Completely. Utterly. Embarrassingly. Hilariously. Shockingly. Lost. Your candidate prior was in the race and ran on hope and change. Do you remember that? I remember that. That was in my political awareness. Obama would go to a mic, he would grab it, and with the height of his lungs, as much power as he could muster, he would scream hope and change. He had people coming to those rallies crying. Why do you think they were crying like that? Why do you think those people were so rattled and the things that he said so got into them so? Why do you think that was? Do you honestly think that they were he's screaming hope and change, these expansive, magnificent words? And mind you, those things mean various things to other people, but at the very least, there's a euphoric connotation associated with this transcendence of politics itself. Do you think they were hearing status quo as he was screaming hope and change? Do you think when those people put him in that office, and they put him in with a supermajority in the Senate and in the House, do you think they were looking for him to deliver something that was expansive? I make this point because he had people across the political spectrum that put him in that office. White, black, everything in between. He brought all those people together. And he did so on a message of profound, expansive change. They didn't get that. They didn't get that at all. And the very next vote total was less. Now, I say that to say this idea that people want status quo and it's nonsense. Those people want somebody that is going to represent them and represent their interests. They want somebody that is going to browbeat and be an advocate for them because they feel like they don't have one as it is. They want somebody that transcends to some degree the party dynamic. They want you to represent them. That's what they want. This idea, when Donald Trump ran on increasing the minimum wage. He's running to Republicans, talking about increasing the minimum wage, talking about big, beautiful health care. The Republicans still voted for him. If Republicans were so against those things, why on earth would they vote for a guy who was essentially running against the Republican Party dogma itself? Sanders went to West Virginia and rocked. Michigan rocked. I'm saying the world and the country is not as divided as people make it seem. They just distrust what's taking place. They understand something is off. And they're looking for something to make their lives materially better. And they're not getting those things in the political dynamic that we currently have. you know you have a problem, meaning the Democratic Party, when you need to take steps to either cheat a candidate or you need to take steps to put your thumb on the scale. All of those things are signs of a party that has lost control lost control of itself. I mean, understand what you're doing. The people in a particular area hadn't made the decision on who they wanted, and yet you, meaning DCCC in that area, had made a choice already, going so far as to tell other candidates to get out of the race. Now, if your populace is responding to something, and if that is turning people either anti-capitalist or, let's say, capitalist skeptical, or hey, maybe even the capitalist, but maybe more so trending leftward, I'm saying against what you would consider to be the established order of things, then that's a natural reaction to what is taking place in society itself. And it's a natural reaction to what is taking place in the society. What you're doing, however, is abnormal in the sense of trying to prevent those things from bubbling up to do what they're supposed to do and balancing out the society. I'm making this point to you that you've lost the mission. What you're doing is essentially trying to maintain a power base, not necessarily represent the people who are in these various areas of the country. There's a difference in those things. It boils down to this. The majority of our financial support are from Wall Street business executives. You're crafting a moderate message. You're crafting a moderate message because at the end of the day, these are the people who represent you, who put money in your pocket. And if you want to be able to continue to keep getting money from these people, you need to put down the leftist bunch that don't like these people. And they will put a tax on these people because those people coming in will want to pay for things like healthcare and increase Social Security and job support, things that the American public would agree with and that would win all throughout the country. The problem with that is you're so in bed with these people that you support their interests over the interests of the country itself. They make these arguments like, oh no, we can never sell this. It's not something you have to sell. It's not something you have to sell. You make the argument as to why they're better off in this case. The problem is you've lost so much trust. You've debased the left in the way that you've gone about your affairs. Every step that you took to the right, they took a step backwards, dragging the political landscape further and further to the right, while at the same token making yourselves look like you have no value system and believe in nothing. One or two things is going to take place. The people who are trying to actually reform the party will be able to reform the party. Meaning the Pelosi's of the world, the Schumers of the world will stop trying to fight what is the natural process of cleaning house and allow it to take place. Or not. The not situation has this odd reality of some kind of corporate hack running against Donald Trump and potentially losing again. Now the catch is, if the person loses again, there's going to be all sorts of Social Security, Medicare, tell it goodbye. Because if Trump wins again, he's also... The Democrats are not going to win the Senate or the House if Donald Trump wins the presidency again. I say that to say, it's almost like a last stand. It's the belief that you can bring back lefties to the party because of how bad Donald Trump is. And that you can run in a way that try to pull them back without using issues of economics in the political space. Still using identity, screaming it to the heights, hugging every darkie you can get your hands on without actually dealing with the economic landscape that will create more of a wide tent. The question becomes, if that works, or if that fails, what happens to the Democratic Party if the party loses to Donald Trump again and loses the House and the Senate potentially again? What happens? Do they change finally at that point where they've lost so remarkably? Or do they win, in which case you resume the pattern of hacks in the party? Or has something taken place where these lefties have gotten more involved in the political space and the political landscape, and they're willing to actually change this entirely? Personally, I think there needs to be a third party. I don't think you can really get what you want to get out of this with two parties. Ultimately, you're going to be in a fight for your life from the standpoint of wealthy interests that is going to be putting dollars and dollars and dollars into people's pockets. California is a good example with Rendon. Jimmy Dore makes his point really well. Look, my point is they should be terrified. They should be terrified because there are true believers that are coming behind that are trying to clean house. Either they're going to beat back the true believers, which I suspect will end up with them having a shitty record in Congress because I don't think they can win under this idea of moderates, or they're going to allow it to take place. Question becomes which one. Are they going to fight it? Or are they going to embrace it? I strongly suspect they're going to fight it, but we'll see. I mean, the whole idea of the moderate thing in and of itself sounds like they're going to fight it. Look, I'm going to put both articles at the bottom. You know, this is going to be, I mean, this is going to be fascinating. I mean, this is somewhat of an interregnum. It's true that the corporatists still have control of the party and the political apparatus. But they're also right that the ideas, for the most part, that's been propagated most have been from the left. Well, that the arguments that have been made up to this point, recently anyway, has been from the left. So, God no, they aren't terrified. They control all the cash in the party leadership positions. They do, but that's not... That could be fleeting. I know what you mean, Garden. I feel you. I don't know if that's the end all be all though, if that makes sense. Like I could be concerned about something while being in somewhat of a dominant position. Like, for example, when Republicans took power, my thought was Republicans are in somewhat of a weak position. They're going to have a hard time holding on to what they got because now they have to govern. And what I meant by that is Donald Trump is a clusterfuck. And they're going to have to coordinate their activities to get stuff done while at the same token probably looking extraordinarily bad because Donald Trump is going to be extraordinarily bad. Now, the catch in this and the wild card to this is Democrats. Nobody knows what they represent. Nobody knows what they stand for. The only thing they can talk about is Trump and Russia, which doesn't really necessarily allow you a decent, real resistance, at least not from the standpoint of ideas and pushing ideas to try to get certain things done. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those stay tuned things. I need to see how it turns out. They don't get anywhere until they compromise. They can be anything. Compromise my ass. This is not the time for compromise. I'm not into this moderate mindset of compromise. And to some degree, my feeling is that the moderates just need to lose. This is not... Most Democrats at this point, when you do polling, says they want people to be more like Sanders. The moderates, in this case, are the ones that are out of the political space. They're not in sync with what the party wants. They are the oddballs in this case. They are trying to sell something to people to bring those people into their line of thinking. Now, to your point, Gardner, you're right that the corporatists control all of the political landscape. But that being said, the people, the party members themselves, prefer somebody like Sanders. That's an interesting dynamic between those things. That's an interesting interplay. Cortez is the wedge, Crowley is the hedge. Oh, Bob. Tom Dark Legend. I'm not saying I agree with this message, but Trump is the traditional Republican who believes in capitalism. A lot of middle class Republicans believe the big business uses illegal immigration. You know, it's wild. They do. And that's the funny part. That somebody made that argument to me, and I had to concede that they may be right to some degree. Democrats push. So imagine yourself a Republican. Jesus Christ, my mouth is tight. Imagine you're a Republican. You're in bumfuck Louisiana or Milwaukee, and you see Trump say, "We're trying to stop illegal immigration because they're taking your jobs." Now, you know this is nonsense because the illegal immigration thing is not anywhere near the way Trump is trying to blow this out of proportion. But the person who's looking at that is saying Democrats are trying to open the border because Democrats are friendly with these corporations and they're okay with this idea of illegal immigration. Now, if you are susceptible to that particular argument and you see the Democratic Party pushing for this idea of abolishing ICE and everything else. Now, understand the abolish ICE conflates the abolish ICE with abolish the borders entirely. The catch is Donald Trump, when you're looking at the polls, is more trusted on border issues, not necessarily on what he's doing to the kids, but purely on the specifics of the border itself. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to make a delineation between those things. It's like they don't trust Democrats on borders because they believe Democrats are more in line with open borders. By the same token, they don't like what Donald Trump is doing, throwing kids in prison. The public is split. So, Balthazar, it's really hard to blame immigrants for taking your shitty job while you make a living wage, and so do they. Yeah, the blaming the immigrant thing is just a decoy. That's not a... Republicans do that because they don't necessarily want to deal with the real issues. Look, here's the catch. When Democrats don't deal with issues of economics, that's allowed. Believe it or not, the immigration debate, to some degree, is an issue of economics, at least from the standpoint of Republicans, in the way it's framed. Democrats don't hit that. Not voting for the lesser of two evils, state or national. Harold Hedge, I agree with you. I agree with you. I would love to see Jeremy Corbyn run in opposition for Democrats. Progressives, forget about draft Sanders, draft Corbyn instead, bring him in as an advisor. Lands, I would love that. I would love it. Absolutely love it. Let's see. Jesus Christ, does this guy not sleep? It's 3 a.m. on the West Coast and about to... I'm an insomniac. I have a hard time sleeping sometimes. I don't sleep well. Manny W. If you want a third party, ask a 35, 45-year-old legitimate candidate. Don't ask Bernie. It's kind of silly, honest. He has support, but not like a AMLO. Oh, you're talking AMLO. And no, he does have support. I mean, it's a different country. The United States is massive. This is what, 300 million people. Bernie has the support of Democrats. He has the support of independents. I strongly suspect people are susceptible to an argument from somebody who considered an independent that doesn't necessarily have to stink of one party or the other on them. That's what I think. I think when Obama ran and those people said they wanted hope and change, they actually wanted hope and change. That took him at his word. I think when Trump ran and said he was going to make America great, there was a percentage of the country that was desperate for him to be that, even though I think it's ridiculous and silly that they thought he was going to be that running as a Republican. Sanders could do it. He could do it. That's all. Gardner, weed acts like a stimulant for me. It doesn't do either for me, actually. It doesn't do either for me. Hey Jamal, why don't you talk about how can universal health care end the suppression of cures? I don't know what that means. Suppression of cures. I don't know what that means. Oh, you mean like if there was stuff that was like the FDA was holding up or something to that effect? Look, I think universal health care should just be you understand, we choose how we live, like what's normal. If I'm trying to think of an example. If we were living in the Wild West and we're playing spades or we're playing some kind of card game, somebody gets up, shoots the other person, and walks out. They drag the body out, take them to the whatever, and people go about their way. Some people are shocked, some people are pissed off. Maybe a posse is organized to go get the guy. But it's not so uncommon that it blows people's minds. People just go about their way. The guy may even go back and play cards again on the next night. Normality is choice. Like, it's implicit choice, but it's a choice. Like what you consider to be your normal living standards. You, as a society, as a collective, can say, hey, it is cheaper for us to supply healthcare for each other, so we're going to supply healthcare. You can do that. That's your choice. You, as a society, can say, we are going to make sure that each of us have an education, because there's no such thing as freedom without education, without some kind of expansion of the mind. You're not forced to get one, but if you want one, you can get one. Same thing with housing. You will have somewhere to say. The basics of life. If you're born into this society, you can have a decent life. I mean, fuck, man. I don't understand why that's so antithetical to the way we go about our affairs. That just seems so basic to me. Like, why on earth was California have people shitting on the street? Why do you want that as a society? Like even if you say that guy should have led a better life, that he's not out there living on the street. I get that. But you still realize that's the street corner that you're walking by, that guy's taking a dump on. Either way, whether you believe he should have had a decent life or not, and should have did things differently or not, you've still been affected by him. It's like, fuck, we're connected, we're united. There's not a situation where we should be allowing stuff like that to take place. Do you realize that the amount of wealth that is passed or that's been generated, I think, over the last few years or the last year, was enough to get rid of poverty 7 times over? There's certain people in our society, people who the Democrats represent, people who stick money in Chuck Schumer's pocket, who rub credit cards down Nancy Pelosi's ass cheeks, and who tell them to dance, and they get out there and dance, and they would get in front of the press box and they would say whatever they need to say in order to garner votes to get people to shut up and vote, telling them whatever they need to tell them in order to get back to their status quo disposition. Those are the people who represent, or who are being represented by the party itself. And that needs to change. Those people advantage themselves magnificently off of our society. They go to Starbucks. They have the luxury of driving on our roads. They have the luxury of flying through the airspace without bullets and other stuff flying by, knocking them out the air. They have the issue of getting into a taxi, going from point A to point B, maybe an Uber, maybe a McDonald's, maybe a pizza joint. They can go to the building and get their taxes. They can go to the building. Like, if anybody hit them over the head and took their car, they can call the cops. If their building caught on fire, they can call the fire department. They have janitorial services. I'm making the point that they live within the fabric of a society. And they advantage themselves off of that society. Even if it's not necessarily direct from the standpoint of something that they themselves are doing, the fact that they can exist in this particular society, they're advantaging themselves. So they should pay for it. All of us have to pay for it. They are able to advantage themselves more. They should pay more. It's just right. And fact is, whatever that level of tax needs to be in order to make sure that society can support itself is what it needs to be. That's what it is. That's what it is. The Democratic politicians, working in coordination with the Republican politicians, cut taxes and then borrow money. So instead of taxing to a particular degree, they don't do that. They literally cut taxes, meaning we're going to cut them out of money of revenue that the government has coming in, while at the same token borrow more money. That's silly talk. And yet that's what they do. It's a goddamn scam. And part of the reason it's a scam, and that scam is allowed to prosper, is because of shit like this. Who do these guys represent? Right here. This is who they represent. Majority of our financial support from Wall Street business executives. And you have the moderate Democrats. Party members' fundraisers gathered for an invitation-only event to figure out how to counteract the rising progressive movement. It's an interesting article. But the article basically is this. They're getting together to figure out how to fight the lefties. So, let's see. It's hard to reach across the aisle when Democrats are giving a rim job while GOP are giving a blow job to the same donors. By the way, them on one side of the aisle. Yeah, think about it. It is. It is. It's like, where do you go? This is kind of my you have nowhere else to go argument. This idea of, yeah, we're going to give these guys a hand job, but we're just going to give a blow job. So you're better off with us. And it's like, but you're still giving a blowjob to the same people. Shit. Can I go to somebody who's not being sexually defiled? Or who's not sexually defiling somebody? Balthazar, I'll happily get off Bernie 2020 train once there's another candidate who's a better progressive with a higher name recognition and popularity. Agreed. You need at least that much to beat the Democrats and GOP's fuckery that'll happen in 2018, 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if Democrats don't win in 2018. Balthazar, me either. They're betting the farm on look, there's a few people betting the farm. Lefties are betting the farm on Sanders. They are. And I suspect I'm part of that bunch too. And I think Democrats are believing that they have a good chance of winning in 2018. Maybe. We'll see. Ironically, the Green Party is our only party. Yeah. Which means we don't have a party. MacArthur, Louisiana. Replace the Democrats with Justice Democrats. They will be a little bit further to the left. I mean, a little bit better off. Civil disobedience. Can't I get a blowjob for fuck's sake? Stormy 2020. That's funny. I'm still rebuilding the farm from 2016. Alistair Mraz. Harold Hedge. Do I see voter shaming? Oh, hell no. No, look. You know my rule. People can vote for who they vote for. I just wish the Green Party was more. That's all. I just don't know how to get them to be more. Vote Green. I can in Texas. Can't help that the rest of the United States don't know about them nor vote for them. Morning from Richmond, Virginia. Oh, thank you, man. Morning from Richmond, Virginia, indeed. Same here. Good morning, Jamal and comrades. Arya Stark. Good morning, Arya Stark. Jamal actually hates Sanders, but Progressive Voice is off camera with a guy. He's holding me up. He's like, say it, buddy, say it. Say it, buddy, say it. How do you get the Green Party to be more fight for propositional representation, proportional representation? You know, I wish more Americans understood what that was. Because you are right. Like, that would help so much if it was a situation where, let's say, 10% of the population were Greens. At that point, 10% of the population ends up in Congress, and you have a better chance of dealing with it. Progressive Voice couldn't hold a gun, maybe a super soaker. Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. That's brutal. Jamal, worried about your lack of sleep. We can't afford to lose a great progressive to ill health. Oh, Rob, Roop. No, man. Believe it or not, I've been this way since I was much younger. When I was a kid, I used to watch Deep Space Nine. I don't know how many people remember this, but in Richmond, Star Trek used to come on, I think, at like 11 o'clock. And it would be a triple header. Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. And sometimes they would jam it up with Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, and Voyager. And I used to almost every night sit there and watch the entirety of that till like 3 in the morning. I've always had a fucked up sleeping pattern. They apparently, from my understanding, the kidney stuff apparently messes with your sleeping habits. It screws with it. So this may be just an artifact of health to some degree. I love Deep Space Nine. I do too. MacArthur. I do too. Don't get me on a tangent. Jamal, did you hear Cal Kalinske mention you in this Q&A stream yesterday? Brian Tan, somebody told me that. I am honored because I like Cal. Cal is awesome. I've joked him once or twice, but I've joked everybody once or twice. But no, I like Cal. He's on, I don't want to say hostile territory, but his channel has clearly taken a different direction, meaning TYT, than he has on his Russia front. And he has stayed true to this thing of, to what end is this a big deal? And you guys are using this to some degree for political effect. And it's dangerous. Not to mention his debate of Cenk. He beat the stuffing out of Cenk in that debate. No, man, I like Cal. Cal is stayed true. I like him. Remember the episode when Cisco put Jake in an airlock because he was hanging out with Nog and Odo had to stop him? Well, he wasn't going to blow him out the airlock. That was his kid, guard. That was his kid. The sad reality is even most of the left option isn't going to substantially affect the massive military spending, prisons, the status quo machine. All we can do is cry a little less corruption. Ivory, I'm not in this mindset of cry a little less corruption. I'm in this mindset of an overarching goal. I don't believe in this thing of politics for the sake of politics. It should have a reason. It should have a point. What is your goal? What are you in it for? Are you in it for shits and giggles? Are you in it just to do one thing? Or are you in it to move the ball? I want to move the ball in a very specific direction, as far and as hard and as fast as I possibly can go. That's what I want to do. So I don't want this thing of just a little bit of military spending. I want to break the fingers of the thing that allows the existential struggle. Meaning the thing that allows the struggle to take place, where it's this grab and pull between capitalists versus workers, or the rich versus the poor. I want to break that. And I want to put the structure in place that to some degree either disallows it or magnificently inhibits it from taking place. I don't want just a singular idea from the standpoint of politics. I don't think politics should be run that way. I think politics should be run as a full-blown plan. What do I want to accomplish? Where do I want to go? What is the world I want to look like? And what are the things I need to do to get it to look that way? What are the planks I need to take down if I want to take down capitalism? Is that wait for financial crash and then buy out the banks? What is it? What does it look like? That's what I want. I don't want this singular plans. I know what you mean, Ivory. I wanted to go further than that. Interview John Potash, author of Drugs as Weapons Against Us. Then you get why the left sucks in the United States. I love Cal when he's not trying to do a mini jank with his straw manning imitations and doing proud dad on Justice Democrats despite their admitted fuckery, their administrative fuckery. I don't get to watch his videos as often. In fact, I don't get to watch anybody's videos as often. I usually just, at this point, watch them for work. But yeah, bright. Cal, and you know, it's funny, Cal said something one day that helped me tremendously. It really did. And it goes to show this thing of how people can say things, never meet you, don't know them, and they have dramatic effect that echo and kind of reverberate beyond just the person themselves. Cal, one day, I was driving home and I was listening to one of his podcasts. He was talking about working. And he was saying how when he was at one of his jobs, he was like, I was the laziest motherfucker on the planet. He said it just like that. I was the laziest motherfucker on the planet. And he says, I would go to the job. I hated doing the job. And you got this clear sense of just hatred of what he was doing. And I think I was like driving home from a job that I had a clear sense of how much I hated that job. When I started it, I loved it. Somewhere along the way, I started to absolutely despise it. And Cal was getting across this thing of how much he hated the job and I resonated with that because I was like, yes, same here. And how when he started his channel, it was the opposite. Like, it wasn't this thing of him being lazy. It was the opposite. It was him vibrant, working, enjoying it, loving it, putting large amounts of energy into it. Nobody had to compel him. There was no whip. Nobody was hitting him over the back of the head to kind of get him to do it or cattle prodding him. He did it because he wanted to. That's dramatically expansionary. Maybe, and expansionary is not the word I want to use. Maybe euphoric. But there's something amazing about that. There's something beautiful about that. It's to some degree a free man. And I know it's not a free man because the moment he stops, the money is going to stop. But it breaks this idea that people only work because it's a wage. He's doing it because he loves it. Just like many people who are teachers because they love it, or nurses because they love it, or doctors because they love it, or engineers because they love it. Hey, what you don't get is a waiter or a waitress. But you will get the things in your society that you need. I experience it as the same way. I would work all day and I would come home and I would do this till like 2 a.m. And then I would end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. There would be some days where I would be up all night. There would be some days where it would be, a little bit less. But I experienced it the same way. When I started doing this constantly, or when I started doing this as a job, it's weird. It's like you end up spending more time, not less, but you're spending time that you enjoy. Look, I enjoy sucking in information in general. So for me, the sucking in information part is perfectly okay. Coming up with a way to articulate it in an interesting, clever, almost pastor-like way takes a little bit of thought, and to some degree, it's just part of who I am. But I understood what he meant. I totally understood what he meant. Watch CCP Gray's Animal Kingdom voting system vids, H Bomber Guys, Election Watch 2017 video on Brexit, and do a segment on HR 3057 when you have time. What is HR 3057? Somebody else said that. HR 3057. I need to figure out what that is. Animal Kingdom voting systems. Voting system. Alright, yeah, I'll check it out, Balthazar. Not sure what the one is, but I'll check it out. If you try to force it, Mother Nature has a way of fighting back. Joseph Stalin, ring a bell. Well, Joseph Stalin was just one permutation. I mean, that's like saying all permutations of X would turn out a particular way. Stalin was one way of going. Hitler was a permutation of fascism. Mussolini was a permutation. The United States is somewhat of a permutation of a, I guess you can say, a republic, capitalistic type system. Look, there are other ways of organization. I mean, all of the power is accrued into the state. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe it shouldn't be accrued in the state in the way it was accrued. But there are other ways of doing it, more like an anarchist model where you would have worker own the means of production in this case. So you wouldn't necessarily have government having all of this power. You would have these things as worker guilds. There are other ways around it, that's all. Gul Dukat was a permutation as well. Oh God, Gul Dukat was a fucking war criminal. He was a Nazi war criminal. Jamal, can you interview scientists that are doing research in space-time metric proportion? I don't know anybody who's doing research in space-time metric proportion. I try to get high marks for my government ideas, but the country's stalling. What I'm trying to say is that capitalism will turn into socialism through evolution is best. No, you don't know that. Why do you think that? You don't know that at all. You don't know that at all. You're making that up out of whole cloth, buddy. Why do you think that? You think that the rich are going to turn over the means of production just willy-nilly. You think that Uber is going to give over the means of production to the government and say, hey, here he goes. Or to the people themselves and say, hey, have at it. That has not been the experience. The experience has been the opposite, with a small section of the population getting more and more and more and more rich. That's what you've seen with austerity, with wages stalling. That's what you've seen. That's the reality of events. This idea of capitalism going to turn into socialism. So, hey, just hold on and stand pat. Just let us get more and more cash. It'll happen. It'll happen. A good example of how human nature is irrelevant to the economic systems are things like democracy or Good Friday Agreement, and all Catholics stop hating Protestants, but the institutions allowed it to happen. I do believe institutions matter. I do believe those things shape human behavior. Like, for example, you're in a capitalistic system. In that system, competition is essentially the order of the day. One business, these businesses fight and everything else. And the impetus for the system itself is to maximize your profit. Well, how do you maximize your profit? It depends on who you are. That may mean cutting wages. It may mean getting exploitative agreements. Let's say having bananas like from Guatemala, or having governments overthrown in order to put in dictators so you can get your bananas at a cheaper rate. There are consequences to these things, to the capitalistic system. Yeah. Is the Hunger Games socialism Who knew? Who knew? Who knew indeed, Avery? Brave New Deal. Go to the rich and say, y'all better give the people the cash or you're going to lose a lot. Been done before. Yeah, I think it needs to, this hamster wheel needs to stop. At some point, people needs to stop. It's fucking sick of it. All right, I'm going to end this because I have other videos that I want to do. Might as well start my day. I had an awesome talk. All of us were on with Yvonne talking and puttering about. So might as well start now and get my rest a little bit later. So if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. Of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, everyone. Let me make sure I got everybody. Proud dad. That's funny. The drugs as weapons thing I knew about. The Richard Nixon attacking blacks and hippies with the drug stuff coming out in Harper's Magazine. Unless they mean it in a different way. All right. I'll see you guys shortly. I'll be back. Thanks, guys.